Hi everyone, thank you once again for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at shallowing the club with a focus on how to match up the club face in the downswing. Often I'll see players, in an effort to get that nice shallowing of the club that we see with some of the best players out there, they'll end up in a position here where the club face is quite wide open, clearly not desirable. So that's what we're going to look at today. So before we move into shallowing the club and matching up the club face, if you enjoy this video and if you're enjoying the channel, please remember to hit subscribe. Or if you ever want some help with your own game, go to ianmellorgolf.com and you can contact me through the website. We can get you set up there. Okay, so shallowing the club, a really hot topic on, well, really every platform, has been for a while. We see a lot of the best players in the world though have that little shallowing motion in transition. So it is something that you see a lot of them do, and it is something that I think is, you know, kind of worth for some players aspiring towards. However, the visual in the down the line angle can be somewhat misleading for a lot of players, or they can interpret it as all we have to do is get the club to do that in transition, when there's actually a number of different ways we could achieve that movement. And what typically leads to the club face getting open is a player trying to achieve that movement with too much of a focus on the hands and the arms in transition, and just trying to make the club look a certain way, or the shaft look a certain way in that transition phase. So often when I see players also do it more with the hands and arms, they're actually quite slow with their lower body as far as firing through at impact. When working with really good players, really good ball strikers, what I've seen is that the way they move through backswing puts them in a position so that when they dynamically, in transition, separate the lower body from the upper body with a good amount of speed, it leads to a reaction through the chain where the club has that nice little shallowing effect. So that response of the club shaft shallowing is more in relation to how they've moved through backswing, the position they're in at top of backswing, and then how they've transitioned with a focus on the sequence of the lower and upper body, that nice separation. So they're not actively trying to do anything with the hands and arms, and that's where a lot of amateurs go wrong. I see them really trying to accomplish a certain position or a certain visual on the down the line view on the camera, but they're not actually doing it in the same way or a similar way for them that would match up that we see a lot of the best players do. Okay, so I've got a simple, what I think is quite a simple drill to help you to get that understanding. So in backswing, what I've seen in a lot of good players is that from a external rotation standpoint of the trail shoulder, so this movement here, from setup, there may be a little bit of external rotation, but there's not a whole lot. And as you can see, I'm doing this little drill here where I let my arms hang and I put my left hand or my lead hand under my trail humerus there, and I move to the top of backswing there, and there's not a huge relationship change between, from a rotational standpoint, in the trail shoulder here. So it's going to stay pretty similar, maybe a touch more externally rotated. Okay, but then as I go into transition and I drive with the lower body and I get that nice separation, that's when that trail shoulder is going to move into more external rotation. Okay, so we can get in here and doing this drill here will help you to kind of really order up and put everything in a good position top of backswing for the transition. So for the transition, what I like is if you do that same drill, you'll see where I'm getting a club here at the minute, to the top, and then you take a club out in front of you and just put your left hand on it out here like I'm doing. I'll show you this face on in a moment, and then just push up the instep of your trail foot, pushing your lead hip up and open. So my upper body is now staying more closed to the target, and my lower body is driving forward and open. And you can see that when I do that, my right hand works quite differently. So now, instead of working this way to try and accomplish the shallow, where if you use my right hand as a face reference, club face reference, it'd be quite open there. If I do this drill, it looks as though the right hand is getting in a position where it's more going to cover the golf shot, and that's what we want. It's getting into a squarer position, so we can just move through the shot on the way down. There's going to be less manipulation through the shot. So once again, into setup, to the top of backswing. We're going to put the club out, and then from there, we're going to push the lower body open, keep the upper body closed. And you can see now how the trail shoulder, arm and hand respond. Okay, from face on very quickly. Couple of different cues I want you to keep in mind here. So I'm going to go to that top of backswing position, put this out in front of me. You can see that I'm keeping my head in that transition pretty much lined up with the club there. And that's because I don't want to start pushing it too much this way. That's one common fault I see with a lot of players. Also trying to shallow it, you see too much of that movement. So they're actually then trying to shallow again through, they're doing it through more through the trail, like lower side of the spine here. So we actually want to keep your head lined up with the club shaft there as we're doing this feel there. A lot of movement through my trail shoulder there, and of course, that's always something to check beforehand as well, knowing how much range you have from an internal external rotation standpoint. External in backswing is what we're looking at is really valuable as well. If you're unable to achieve enough external rotation, we might have to look at ordering your backswing in a little different way to help you in that transition. Okay, so once you've done that, pick up your club to the top here and try and use that same transition feel of where your head should be in space, pushing the lower body, keeping the upper body closed, and then just check where the club face is as you come in through downswing. And as I always say, I'm a big fan of, for me, working on the feels away from the golf course, coming to the golf course, and then having just your own simple feel. So I don't do a ton of this myself on the range. I do more drills away from the golf course, pick up a club in a mirror sometimes, and then when I'm at the range, I actually really like my main focus being on, like, as long as I can have a good sense, I'm supporting the club and feel well balanced at the top, it's then that dynamic transition. So that for me is one area more golfers could really improve on, just being more dynamic in that transition, getting more separation between the lower and upper body, and then just through backswing, having everything in a nice spot. So when you do achieve that transition, everything moves very much flowing on its own. You're not having to think too much of how the transition should be feeling or could be feeling. Okay, let's have a go at hitting one. So set up here, going to put my focus purely on smooth backswing, try and get into hit those spots, but then even more focus on just a nice dynamic transition. And not a bad one there. Yeah, not a bad one there. I think I could have even done better in the transition on that one. Okay, so there's a couple of ideas how you could match up that club face, but also some good ideas then of how you could improve that transition phase.